There's some fine writing in the New York Times about Stephen Paddock and his ways in the Mandalay Bay Hotel, the big gambling den in Las Vegas, Sin City. And I'm not sure that I would agree with President Trump's assertion that all those who died are with God. That's certainly not giving credit to these people who, many of whom were there with no intention of being godly, and in fact were there to take part in many pleasures of the flesh, pleasures of the table, pleasures of the gambling table, and the gambling den, which are all of which are kind of self-seeking vices. And Sin City is famous not for its godliness, but for its ungodliness. That is, that there is pride in that. It is a well-lit place with glitter and delights and pleasures to be had almost at every turn. You don't have to go far to find whatever pleasure it is you want that is illicit. And since you're not at home, you're not in your hometown among family, you're all among strangers. You can really do what you want and you don't have to skulk too much about it. You just go ahead. And so that is really a note of pride for cities like that are venal and corrupt. And I would say corrupt down even into the administration of justice and judgment in the law. Why we wonder, and so does the Daily Mail, and so does Newsweek. Why were the officers waiting an hour outside Stephen Paddock's door? More than an hour waiting outside that door, waiting for backup, I guess. Right? We were told in one press statement by a high official the day after that in 10 minutes that we were on the scene. Well, it was not that. It was more than an hour. And the Daily Mail headline is they took too long to take him out. Veteran who alerted the cops to Vegas gunman's exact location demands to know why it took more than an hour for the hotel room to be raided, as it's revealed officers waited outside for more than 24 minutes. So these are things that suggest venality, venal being corrupt, venal being weak, venal being having reasons other than those that present themselves in the moment as requiring this particular act, this particular heroic act. After all, that is why officers join the police department. They want to have that heroic moment that they can save innocent life. They put their own lives on the line facing death. And the Newsweek report suggests that, well, it could be just an erroneous suggestion, but the implication from a nature of a quote that about how the vests that these officers wore weren't able to withstand rifle shots. That somehow that's the reason that they didn't go in. I don't know that's the case, but it suggests a kind of low view of the public, whose safety, whose lives are being forfeited every moment that action is not taken. And so it is a city, as I want to suggest to you, that prides itself on being ungodly. So for the president to nobly suggest that all those who died there have had God's favor and lived lives of grace, right? Lived lives graciously thinking about others, graciously denying oneself pleasures for the benefit of others, right? That's what Christianity requires, a life of putting the other person first rather than your own lusts, right? Rather than feeding your own lusts, you respect and honor your marital vows. That's what Christianity requires. And here we have a city where those very things are rejected, openly rejected, and that rejection subsidized and protected by the police department. The New York Times story tells about this very odd man. He was not very friendly, didn't have a lot of smiles, and the staff of the Mandalay and other casinos were interviewed by three writers from the New York Times who clearly put a lot of resources into getting this story. He had a methodical style, and his skill level allowed him to gamble and occasionally win, the story says, tens of thousands of dollars in one sitting, collecting payouts in bunches. And the room that he had rented was a freebie because he was a big company, a big customer, and deserved to get a free room as a comp, right? A compensation. The story says that he hungered for the kinds of rewards that only that the Las Vegas Strip could provide. That is a uniquely personal and private, onanistic kind of pleasure that you have in gambling. He was not widely known among the city's serious gamblers. The big ones are called whales. But placing bets of $100 or more in video poker, quote, this guy was gambling high, says Anthony Curtis, a former professional gambler and owner of a public website that covers the casino business. Mr. Paddock once owned and managed an apartment complex near Dallas and has been described as a wealthy retiree, but he was a gambler and he did it enough and got enough personal satisfaction from it that he was a regular there. And he had big amounts coming and going. CTRs were filed over him. That is to say, money coming in and going out. CTR is a currency transaction report, which again is Congress passed that rule against money laundering back in the 1980s, and $10,000 back then meant a lot. But because we have such slight inflation, $10,000 is peanuts. It's really nothing at all. But Stephen Paddock had big credit lines that he could have long sit down sessions. The story says. But he was someone who always paid his accounts. The story also quotes has this at the Atlantis in Reno. Mr. Paddock would often move to a machine when somebody using it got up to take a break. That would annoy people, and he did not seem to care at all. Mr. Weinrich said he acted like those machines are for me. He also was someone who was a starer. This man says he loved to stare at other people playing. It was not a good thing because it would make the other VIPs in the high limit area uncomfortable. One of my guests once said to me, he really gives me the creeps. At Mandalay Bay, he played video poker machines in a place, a quiet place called high limit slots, set aside from the jangly machines on the vast floor. This room has its own attendants working behind a desk and its own restrooms to keep the gamblers close. You don't have to, if you have to take a leak, you don't have to wander down out of this high profit area for the casino. He was a math guy, said Eric Paddock, the youngest brother. He could tell you off the top of his head what the odds were down to 0.1% on whatever machine he was playing. He studied it like it was a PhD thing. It was not silly gambling. It was work. The brother says. Now the brother appears in a story in not in the mainstream media, but in Telehub, which in a story by the founder of that website, he makes a connection between the brother who is in a photograph wearing a Central Florida Community Arts and making comments. Interestingly enough, upon further investigation, a woman by the name of Sarah Brady is listed on the Central Florida Community Arts website as the chairman of the board. Now, she is someone, the story says, quoting the Florida Community Arts website, that she's someone involved in crisis management and strategic communications. Named PR Professional for the Year by FPRA and one of Orlando Magazine's 50 Most Powerful People, serves on the board of the Orlando Science Center. Even more shocking, he says, is the fact that Sarah Brady is also listed as the One Pulse Foundation's official website as a PR representative. Now, that word Pulse is the tavern that was shot up by Mr. Mateen, the homosexual or the anti-homosexual Muslim bar patron. In fact, Sarah Brady heads up her own public relations firm called SBPR, Sarah Brady Public Relations, and she has managed some of the biggest crisis and reputation management challenges in recent memory. That's very bad writing, by the way. Reputation management challenge. That's just as wooden-eared as it gets. And admits that Sarah Brady worked with Pulse nightclub after the shocking shooting that made news around the world in June of 2016. So she is these are the brother Eric Paddock's connections. Okay, now you can make a lot of these connections, and I think they should be made, but they are they are suggestive of a story that is beyond the pale of what we're going to get likely in the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. You know, gambling is a vice, and what we don't know about this particular gunman as to what his sorry. This is David Tulis, by the way, here at Nooga Radio, live on Facebook and live on YouTube, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4, the high definition channel. Gambling is a vice, and because we have predator states, we need to understand how the story is likely to be worse than we're getting from the press. Meaning the use to which this massacre is being put will be greater than we think. Caller, this is David Tulis. You're live on the air. What's on your mind? Okay. Now, gambling is a vice, and I want to just mention that that we have official gambling in Tennessee. I say it's. Let me try to separate what I'm trying to do here. We have this story, and the non-established media, the internet media, I would say the free press, is suggesting that there's a lot more to this than we think, and the use to which this massacre will be put points out the role of the predator state. The modern state will use events like this for its own political ends. It's desire to control the law, to change the law in its favor and against you, my listener. Now, we say, well, why would you have such a jaundiced view about government, David Tulis? Why do you think that the government is always isn't, after all, government? Doesn't government spend millions of dollars of tax dollars to support police departments and detective agencies and departments of safety and homeland security and the like? Is that not all for the public good? Well, no, not really. And we have to look at. I would like to suggest we have to look at the nature of the modern state, and I would say it's a predatory organism, and it is an organism that cannot stop. It cannot recede. It cannot be made to go back. It cannot retreat. It is congenitally. It is. Well, I was going to say teleologically, but I don't think that's the right word. It is by design and by its own claims upon reality. It is a body and an entity that has to continually expand. It does not know how to retreat. It does not know how to downshift. It does not know how to demit. I might say to undo a mission. Right, when you begin a mission, you start your program, and demission is when you end it. Right, you have a mission and then you have a demission. We don't ever have stays in demission. They're always on a new mission, and so events like this are occasions for opportunity. And so whether this is a conspiracy to have a new law passed that will offend constitutional government, I don't want to speculate, but certainly we know that the states are like this. Look here in Tennessee, gambling. I mentioned gambling, and this man's vice. It is his life in these casinos is really a very empty life. It's all about the sensation of having the coins or the chips fall out of the machine into a pile at your feet, and thinking that you've beat the odds. Well, gambling is a vice, and the state takes advantage of it. And here we have a gambler, and it could be that the state is going to be taking advantage of his mayhem. But here in Tennessee, we have this, and it's just a matter of government. In fact, the people voted to have a state lottery back in 2002 in November. There was a statewide lottery to allow it, a statewide referendum to allow gambling, and the state got into it. The lottery, according to the lottery website, ticket sales have brought in more than $16.6 billion for 12 consecutive years. The lottery offers a huge variety of games, it goes on to say, and so on. There are 5,000 retailers that share in the earnings. The retailers have earned more than $1 billion in commissions since the beginning of ticket sales. And of course, that everyone has these companies they're tax collectors. They're given part of the tax collection take, the sales tax take for the payment for collecting the tax. And here they're also sharing in the winnings. Where does the money go? Well, we have $4 billion from the $16 billion collected that go for a fourth of the money has gone for education programs. So you have $16 billion collected, and $4 billion of it, a fourth of it, has gone for education. I'm trying to remember now. That was, I think, the cause of the passage. Well, if we have a lottery, we will be able to pay for schools, right, as they're called, public schools here in Hamilton County and across the state. Grants and scholarships since 2004. More than 1 million grants and scholarships to in-state institutions have been awarded to Tennessee students. Out of every dollar spent on tickets, the largest portion goes to pay prizes. Other portions are used to pay retailer commissions. So the prizes that you're paying to buy, right? You're buying a chance at a prize. That consumes most of the money that's collected. But it's $16 billion taken from people who are, I would say, they're willing victims. And if we look at the compulsions that seem to have driven Stephen Paddock, they're only half willing, right? You're willing in one sense. Legally, you could say the person is willing, but psychologically, emotionally, and perhaps in face of God, that person is not willing at all. But he is acting under I would say, a sinful compulsion. It is a vice to be addicted to gambling, and to have a life like that where you simply are in this dark room among these brightly lit and noisy machines, and you're putting in coins and you're calculating the number and you're pulling the handle. These are all things that are they're simply non-productive. And here in Tennessee, we have you might say, the predator state with the consent of the people, right? Inspired by the high moral character of the people. We have a gambling machine run by the Tennessee Education Lottery Corporation, created in June of 2013 by the General Assembly. That body runs the lottery, and was created by the legislature when 58% of people just like you and me said, well, I support public education, and so I'm going to vote for this so that we can tax people who want to have some fun, right? Want to have some fun, want to have some entertainment, and buy lottery tickets. And we will see how far we get, and we'll help all these children. We will help all these children. Well, let me ask you this: do you really think that the world is compartmentalized like that? Do you not think that we live in a universe? We live in a single universe, an ethically and judicially unitary universe that God made. And if God made the universe and everything in it, then we can't compartmentalize things by saying, well, this is a vice, okay, but we're gonna tax this particular vice, and we're going to without moral taint fund and pay for hire teachers and give scholarships to students. That, of course, is a neutral enterprise, right? So you have the state pretending that, number one, that education is a neutral enterprise, which it's not. It's highly religious, and then we're going to support this neutral enterprise by taxing a vice. We're going to take a vice that is a form of wickedness, especially if you just dabble in it by buying a ticket here and there. That's just a petty vice, okay? But for people who are consistently hoping for a whim, hoping for a rescue, right? Hoping for a change in providence for themselves by buying these tickets compulsively, they're the victims. And so the lottery system in Tennessee is a kind of strip mining of local economy by the state economy, and that being Nashville, with the consent of the people. Right? The people have agreed to this. And now we have what we deserve. We have the Stephen Paddocks and their cravings for a risk-free profit, right? Not risk-free, but for a windfall, a craving for a windfall, an orgasmic satisfaction that they have if they can beat the system, right? Beat the system, which of course is never beat. These gambling houses, these casinos, which are run by very, very smart people who some of whom have you might say mob connections, some of whom have connections with other profitable vices as well, such as prostitution and drugs. They're all in it, okay? And you're not going to come out ahead of them at all. The house always wins, though there are, of course, the exceptions. And people who go to these casinos in Las Vegas, Sin City, they think that the stars or luck or what have you would be in their favor, may shine upon them and their long bus ride through the desert to get to Las Vegas with the other old people in their striped shirts and their blue tennis shoes. Right, they're all in the bus together, all with gray hair and pot bellies, and the women, former beauties, wearing the latest fashions, and they're all going to win. And the lot doesn't belong to men. The lot belongs to God, and the lottery is it's like saying damn without meaning it, right? The word damn is a word you should not lightly use because it belongs to God. The process of damning, the power of damning, belongs to nobody but God, right? Now, a man may condemn another man to death. Look at the martyrs written about in Eusebius's history. These are martyrs who died for God's glory by wicked men who condemned them, right? But that's not the same as damning. God damns people. Only God can do it. And so someone who uses the word damn or GD carelessly is offending God. It's a sin to say that. And it's really a sin to say damn at all, because what you're doing is you're taking a power and an attribute of God, the power to do that, and you're taking it for yourself and using it for a careless purpose. It's like it's a violation of the third commandment on God's name. You're using God's name in vain. And so the lottery, is the same thing. Who controls the lot? Well, God does. And so it can't be a game. Playing a lottery you can have, I'm not saying board games are sinful, but I'm saying that the lottery, where you count on a blessing to come from it, belongs to God. It does belong to God. So every time Stephen Paddock had a big winning, he earned maybe $10,000 or in chips when he pulled the right buttons or pushed the right knobs on the machine. That's what God controls that. Even though it's digital and even though it may be rigged, God still controls the lot. And so to make a profit off of people who are tempted in this way, you are being very careless, and I would say you're endangering your own soul as an enterprise. And here in Tennessee, as a state, how can the state of Tennessee expect God's blessing upon it if it runs it plays on the lot? But here, though, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the casino, right? Whether it's Nashville or the Mandalay Bay. But what about the person who is the gambler? Well, that person is taking an anti-capital perspective. He is taking a perspective that you can make a windfall. You can make a great profit without having to think, without having to work for anybody, without having to care for anybody. It's all about you. It is the worst idea of the free market and of capitalism. Capitalism is something I defend. Capitalism is good. There are bad kinds of capitalism, for example, debt capitalism, corporate capitalism, klepto-capitalism, philanthrocapitalism of the kind that Bill Gates runs, right? And the man who recently bought Pilot Flying J. Those men are philanthrocapitalists. There are all kinds of bad capitalism, but capitalism per se is a good thing. It comes out of Christianity. It does come out of Christianity. And Christianity has created the free market and the great work ethic that is our heritage in this country. But gambling appeals to someone who rejects that. This is David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Don't punish your gun by leaving it in a corner. Shoot it, sell it, or just toss